During my senior year, I decided to put off college for a while and travel and surf around the world. I had another objective in mind also. I wanted to find a teacher who could reveal to me the experience of my true self. I had glimpses in my life of a life more brilliant than the noonday sun. I knew that God was light. I wanted conscious and direct experience. I wanted tools in my life where I could achieve 24 hours a day connection with the source of life itself. I prayed to God to be shown. I knew there were teachers who had the ability to reveal that experience and unlock that door. After the door was opened, it would be up to me to cultivate that experience. I worked at a grocery store after school on the weekends. I graduated from high school and went on a surfing trip to Mexico for a few weeks. Before I went to Europe, I spent 2 weeks at a yoga camp in Nevada City, Northern California. I had a wonderful time at that yoga camp. The owner of the camp was Kriyananda, a disciple of Yogananda. Yogananda was a famous Indian Swami who died in 1952. Kriyananda was one of his disciples. My fond memories were in the temple late at night. I would meditate late at night and would have these incredible visions inside. I was bathed in a blue light. I felt such a relationship with nature. I felt my life was incredible and that everything was being unfolded. Up to this point in time, I really didn't have the ability to tap into the meditation experience at will. It was a lot of hit and miss. At this yoga camp was the first time I was in an atmosphere where people were consciously trying to experience the source of light. I learned some valuable techniques. I felt such a peace inside of my being. My mind was slowly coming down to a halt. It's kind of funny, without meditation, a human being doesn't realize how powerful the mind is. I remember the first time I closed my eyes and realized a battle was in my hands. It would take patience and work, but it was sure worth it. I spent 2 weeks there and took a plane from Oakland, California to Europe. I went with my high school buddy, Craig Perkins. Craig was a great person to be around. He had a great sense of humor. We hitchhiked from Germany to Denmark. We were looking for a friend named Carter Robinson. We arrived at the dock where Carter lived and found out his boat left a few days earlier. The person told us where they might be for a few days. We hitchhiked to the city and found Carter. It was quite the surprise. We stayed for about a week. They were planning to go to Norway for a while. They asked us if we wanted to go, but we declined. Carter had a guest named Brad Crowell, who was an old friend of mine. We grew up together. After leaving Carter, Craig and I went back to Germany. Craig took a plane back to the 60s. Years later, I don't know exactly what happened. On the subconscious level, I wanted to be my own for the first time in my life. Craig will always be a friend. I haven't seen him for more than 23 years. I took a train to Biarritz, France, where my adventure began. My first week in France, I camped out in the woods near La Barre, a famous surf spot. Each day I would go surfing. I met this American named Peter Lingo, and we became good friends. He was also a surfer. He invited me to stay with him in his tent. He had a huge tent that was staying in the campground overlooking the bar. He also had a car, which helped get around. Both of us didn't smoke, drink, or take drugs. We got some incredible surf. I felt great. We went surfing all over the place. One of my fond memories was driving to this old bakery in the countryside. The views were incredible. The bakery was the same for hundreds of years. They had a stream running through which grounded the wheat. The smells that emanated from that place were truly out of this world. I remember eating these sugar cookies. The people in this part of France were friendly. Craig Perkins. Craig and I became friends during my junior year of high school. Craig has a great sense of humor. I remember one time my brother and I went on a mountain excursion to a mountain park in the mountains of Orange County. There was this small trail on this cliff. The trail was probably under 2 feet wide. Well, my brother and I were petrified of crossing this. I remember walking very slowly and conscious of every step. My brother John did the same. And here comes Craig, dancing to the tune of Tiptoes to the Tulips. He would kick one foot over the hill edge and then do the same thing to his other foot. It was quite the sight to see. Craig loved the ocean. He was quite the surf photographer. He had a great cannon for his time. Craig was a kneeboarder. He could ride his kneeboard at the Newport Beach famous break the wedge on a big day. I haven't seen Craig in many years. I heard he's living in Mexico. My brother bumped into him in San Diego in the late 90s. He was in a fast food restaurant, and my brother heard Craig's voice. That was a giveaway. That was the last time we heard from him. While I was in France, one day I woke up and saw huge waves breaking. The waves were probably 15 feet high. The surf spot was at La Barre, a famous but now extinct surf spot. I took off on a huge wave, stood up, and the next moment I was free falling down the wave. Back then, there were no leashes. My board got carried to shore. La Barre had a jetty, and there were 15-foot waves breaking on the rocks. The rip was so strong, it was like a river. For the first time in my life, I said, Lord, if you exist, you had better do something real fast. I closed my eyes and saw an incredible light and a small Indian boy. The next moment, I was on shore. Everybody on shore said it was a miracle. The next day, I decided to go to India. As I look back at that experience, I felt the hand that embraced my life. I felt so protected. Here I was only 18 years old, but I knew my life was protected. I was about to start the adventure of a lifetime. This is definitely a near-death experience for me. In the early 70s, I read books about the death experience, and my experience closely resembled that experience. I saw a great light which filled my being with bliss that is boundless. I saw a figure which told me without words that everything would be all right. This experience I knew could be experienced consciously. It didn't have to be a hit or miss affair. I knew a human being could experience the source directly, no matter if he or she were dreaming, sleeping, dreaming, or in the awake state. Man had the ability to tap into the source of life. After my surfing accident, Peter and I started our trip to India. I was very excited. I knew that something wonderful was going to happen in India. All my dreams would come true. We drove from Biarritz to Venice, where we stayed 2 days with an Italian friend from high school. We drove through Yugoslavia. At that time, it was a communist country. The people at that time were very suspicious of outsiders. They weren't very friendly. The countryside was amazing. We were high up in the mountains and could see the Mediterranean Sea. Peter would drive, and he had this harmonica he would play. He was actually a good player. We drove to Athens in Greece. We spent a week there. I loved going to the Parthenon. Here I was in the cradle of such an incredible civilization. I was in awe. We sold our car and took an airplane to Turkey. When we landed in Istanbul, I knew this is where East meets West. The city was so different. The Muslim mosques were so beautiful. The policemen had submachine guns. I never saw that before. I remember staying at this house where a lady came in and said we had better leave because the police was going to raid the place. She said people used drugs and the police were going to bust the place. I felt someone taking care of me. I didn't want to end up in a Turkish jail, especially because I don't use drugs. That would be hard to prove in Turkey. We spent a week in Istanbul and then went to Ankara. In Ankara we had to stay a week because the border was closed. The Shah of Iran was having the 1,000-year anniversary party for Persia. He didn't want young Westerners or trouble to come to his land for this party. I heard that the Shah even built props to hide the poverty. I had a friend who went to the party and said it was quite the affair. They had air-conditioned tents. The Shah spent thousands of dollars. While in Ankara, we saw the Queen of England in a parade. There were thousands of soldiers carrying submachine guns. After a week, the border was open and we took trains and buses to Iran. It's quite a scene traveling. Both Peter and I carried our surfboards and our packs. The trains were quite dirty and packed. We slept on the floor of the train. The buses were like the trains, but they had livestock on board. I was getting quite a lesson on life. We arrived at the capital of Tehran. Tehran was quite a beautiful city. We found out that a week before, a young American tourist died the week before. Supposedly, she entered a Muslim mosque and was stoned to death. The reason was that only Muslims could go inside the temple. I met a man from the secret police. He came up to me and said that he killed about 30 Americans this year. In Iran, if they find drugs in you, they would shoot you on the spot. What a way to control the drug problem. We then took buses to the border of Afghanistan. This is where the scenery drastically changed. I felt I was transferred back 2,000 years ago. The Afghan people are warriors. Their culture is the same for thousands of years. We were in a high mountain desert. Everyone carried guns or rifles. This is way before the Soviet invasion. I felt I was in a Wild West town. There was no law or order. The people were quite nice. If I knew, you didn't want to cross them up. The people in Afghanistan smoked a lot of hash. They used this drug like alcohol. The whole nation used it. The food was quite good. We took a bus from the border and made it to Kabul. Along the way, we bumped into this Hawaiian named Charlie Krishna. Charlie was a great guy and we traveled together. Kabul at this time was a hangout for the European hippies. The Europeans were heavily involved in drugs. They used a lot of opium. It's quite sad to see people my age totally addicted to opium. There's nothing I could do. Many of them simply wasted away. The drug was very cheap and could be bought anywhere. I knew a lot of my friends in the States would have loved to be in that environment. It was an eye-opening experience. For the first time, I saw so many kids totally wasted and hanging on to life with a thread. They were thousands of miles from home. During this time, I would meditate every day. I knew something incredible was going to happen to me in India. I just had the intuition that my dreams would come true. I wish I would meet someone who could show me the way to open the door. I felt totally protected. It's a beautiful feeling to know that someone is watching over you. I was thousands of miles away from home, and yet I felt great inside. I felt protected. My main goal was to get to India. Ever since I left France, that feeling kept on getting stronger. I felt such a wave and anticipation that my dreams will come true. I had only a short time and would be shown to me. I left Kabul and took the Khyber Pass from Afghanistan into Pakistan. The Khyber Pass was used by Genghis Khan. It is one of the oldest trade routes in the world. Throughout history, it has been an important trade route between Central Asia and India. What a radical road. It was all dirt, which most of Afghanistan was. There was no guardrails, and we had these crazy drivers driving as fast as they could down the pass. The buses were quite different. Each bus would have a different altar depending on which religion they belonged to. There would be flowers, incense, pictures, and memorabilia. We would be driving down this huge mountain on a skinny road. This was the one and only route from Afghanistan to Pakistan. Well, we finally made it to Pakistan. Lahore was a busy city. We only stayed for a few days. When I was in Pakistan, I saw signs saying Crush India. When I arrived in India, I saw signs Crush Pakistan. I arrived at the border of India at the beginning of the Indian-Pakistan War. The following day, the border was closed for 5 years. My first day in India was incredible. I remember crossing the border. At this time, there was a 2-mile walk to reach the border check for India. There were parrots and wild birds everywhere. I felt such a strong spiritual experience. I was home. It's hard to put into words what I was feeling. I knew something incredible was to happen to me in India. I was looking for a teacher who would give me a practical experience of who I was. I remember being checked by an Indian custom lady who was famous for busting people for bringing in drugs into India. Since I didn't use drugs, I wasn't worried. I remember such an aura of peace that came over me. The sun was just setting, and the whole forest was alive. Thousands of parrots were in the forest. The smell was like an incredible perfume in the air. I crossed the border and took an overnight train to New Delhi. When I got to New Delhi, I was very tired and exhausted. I heard rumors that the Sikhs allowed people to stay at their temple. I went to this huge Sikh temple. I asked, "Can I stay here overnight?" The man said no, but there's a huge festival going on down the block. The festival is for Maharaji, a 13-year-old boy who just came back from a tour of the West. I remember 4 months earlier reading about him in Time magazine and from my sister. I was intrigued how a 13-year-old boy could have such a huge following. I arrived at the festival site and was escorted to the stage where 1 million people were sitting. It was amazing, a sea of people. The next thing I knew, a young Indian boy walked on the stage wearing a Krishna outfit. He was wearing a gold crown with jewels and a gold outfit. I was laughing and crying at the same time. Something inside of me knew I was home, that the experience I was looking for could be shown by this Indian boy. Being 18 years old, I was very practical that I wanted a direct experience of God inside of me. What this young Indian boy said made sense. He said, "Seeing is believing." If I told you an ant was 10 feet tall, would you believe me? But if I showed you, seeing is believing. He said, "Don't believe in my words. Take my experience. See for yourself. If it suits your practice, if not, go on your way." At this time of my life, this made sense. I have never heard someone saying, "I can reveal who you really are." All my teachers in the past said, "Believe, and maybe someday you will have that experience." Ronnie said, "Take that experience, practice it, and let the seed bloom into a fruit tree." The following day, I packed up my bags and took a train to Brahmnagar. Maraji's ashram is near Hardwar. It's a small town in the foothills of the Himalayas. The next 2 weeks I listened to discourses about this knowledge. Something inside of me knew that I was to receive the experience of a lifetime. I knew the door to my soul was to be opened. Words are hard to express the feeling that was going inside of my being. I knew that in a short time I'd be shown and would reveal the secret of life itself. I knew this experience was real. I told a lot of people who had the experience. I could tell and sense that something wonderful was going on. I liked the idea that the proof is in the pudding. I didn't want to join a cult or religious group. I just wanted a direct and continuous experience of the power that's keeping me alive. I knew through practice this could be achieved. During this time, the war between India and Pakistan was going on. Each night there were air raid sirens going on, and off in the distance we could hear bombs going on. There was a general blackout at night. Pakistani bombers were only miles away. Air raid sirens were heard in the distance. At that ashram, the whole place was so serene, while this part of the world, people were dying. Trains of Pakistanis were being massacred going from India to Pakistan, and trainloads of Indians were being massacred going from Pakistan into India. Such a dichotomy. I'll never forget my initiation. There were probably about 20 of us in a small room. Maraji had initiators who revealed his knowledge. We were in the room while Maraji was playing on top of the roof directly overhead of us. This experience that I had that day still sends shivers of joy, just merely the thought. The first technique the initiator revealed was the light technique. I always knew that the human being had the ability to see the light inside. This is an actual experience. When the initiator touched my forehead, I felt this incredible surge of energy. I knew at that point that something incredible was going to happen. My whole body and soul sensed it. My consciousness completely left its physical existence. A golden circle of light appeared. Inside of this circle, a brilliant blue star appeared. This golden circle of light and this blue star was so beautiful. It's probably the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Waves of love, joy, and peace were surging inside my consciousness. All of a sudden, the star transferred into a ray, a tunnel of blue light which went on for infinity. I merged with the blue ray. It's very hard to describe this experience. I was at home. The doors were open. I was given the keys, and it was up to me to cultivate that experience. I have definite proof that we are more than these bodies. All of a sudden, the mystery of life was revealed. I knew the secrets behind our religion. There was a genuine experience that could be shown and experienced. Years later, I realized that this experience was initiation into Lord Michael's blue ray. It was the Jacob's ladder. This experience was the ladder to God. To this day, I'll never forget this experience. It gave me practical proof that God exists. I knew it, but this was a practical experience. It was more real than any outside human experience. I knew my life was on track. I had waited years to go home. I was shown such a glorious place. When I returned to this body and regained physical consciousness, my whole body was shaking like a dot. My body had a hard time. Can you imagine being hooked up to the power plant of the whole universe? I knew no damage was done. Over time, I knew that the body was built and designed to handle these kinds of currents. Day by day, through meditation, man can slowly harmonize with these frequencies and begin to vibrate at this frequency. There were 3 other techniques that were revealed. One was the music technique. I was shown how to listen to the innermost frequencies of life. Since God is energy, man has the capability to be in tune and listen to subtle yet energy frequencies. Different religions have different concepts about this experience. By listening to this music over time, man is filled with such a joy and peace in his life. The mind slowly begins to slow down. In this state, man gets in contact with an energy frequency that is infinite. This energy is pure love and bliss. The whole universe is comprised of this energy. It was, is, and will always be. This is the Word of God. Every major religion talks about the Word in some form or another. This is a very simple technique where man can be in direct communication with the subtle energy. When a person first receives this initiation, the Word is very subtle. The majority of people really don't understand the power of this Word. I know a lot of people who took this experience and never really tried it out. Over time, I can consciously put myself in direct communication with this word. My whole being is instantly filled with such a wave of love and bliss. I'm not there 24 hours a day, but I know it's possible. I have had experiences that I was completely taken out of this physical world and taken to a place where there's no time and space. The only thing existed was this incredible energy of love. I know I was at home with my Father. This energy exists throughout all creation. It exists in the manifest and unmanifest. It exists throughout time and space and beyond. All of creation came from this word. In the Bible in St. John, the verse goes like this: in the beginning was the Word. The Word was with God, and the Word was God. Human beings have the capability to tune into this experience. The last experience was one of the living waters or nectar experience. When man is in this experience, powerful hormones and enzymes are secreted through the endocrine system. Through the ages, man has learned that he has a capability to actually experience this nectar or living water. Just one drop of this is an incredible, powerful experience. One drop has the capability to take man's consciousness into a definite, altered state. This fluid is very cleansing to the body. When Christ was in the desert for 40 days and nights, he lived off this manna. This experience is energy in its subtle form. It is energy, yet it transmutes itself into matter. This experience is very powerful to the endocrine system. I've had numerous experiences of this nectar. It's probably the most intoxicating drug known in the universe. Unlike a drug which has side effects, this experience is completely beneficial to the body and soul. These experiences reveal over time who we truly are. We are more than our mind or body. We are in fact the source of life. Each one of us are part of this universal consciousness. We just don't remember it. It's amazing when we were born, we came from the source. Our whole body was this consciousness. Over time, we forgot. Years later, we have completely forgot of our true existence. After the initiation, I thank my Creator for revealing Himself to me. My dreams come true. I had the tools. Everything made sense to me. I could read the scriptures and understand the hidden meaning. The scriptures were at the same wavelength. I had a lot of respect for the major religions. The following day, I was sitting by the Ganges meditating when I completely lost consciousness of this planet. I saw a light more brilliant than the noonday sun. My consciousness was flowing into a river of nectar. I felt the whole Ganges river was flowing through me. Raji had a beautiful poem by Rumi, a great Sufi teacher, that sums it up. It goes like this: there is a palace in the sky without any foundation. A blind man sees a light more brilliant than a million suns. A deaf man listens to the unstruck music. A lame man climbs up a well and drinks the nectar and becomes totally intoxicated. The clincher is only a wise man understands what I'm talking about. From then on, my life was to change drastically. After my initiation and this experience, my life was never the same. I was shown something so incredible that my focus was on this experience. My whole life from then on was based upon practically cultivating this experience. Day by day, I was going deeper and deeper into my existence. My days in India were spent in meditation and spending time with Maraji. Meditation was such an incredible experience. I call it going to the movies. Day by day, I was going deeper and deeper into realms I'd never been before. Prabhunagar was such a beautiful place. I was thousands of miles away from home, and then again I was truly at home. I was content and full of such an incredible bliss. My mind was learning to focus on something inside of me that never changes, that was and will always be. I was learning how to be connected to that experience 24 hours a day. I practiced meditation like how I surf with joy and the thrill of riding the waves of life. To this day, I'm still blown away that this experience is lying dormant inside of humanity, just waiting to be discovered. We are searching for the jewel, and the jewel is hidden inside of each one of us. Over time, it's not all bliss and roses with this experience. I had to face my mind. The mind is such a powerful thing. It can be your friend or enemy. I learned over time to become its friend. In the beginning, at times, I thought I would go crazy. The mind was constantly chattering. I would sit for hours, and at times I wanted to get up and just forget the whole thing. But then I would break through. Then that experience would rush in and completely saturate your being. You are bliss. I felt that I had to break down the door. Over time, I walked through the door, and my mind hasn't bothered me in this way since. I'm not saying my mind doesn't bother me. At times it does. But when I close my eyes or put my connection on this Word of God, my whole being is filled with bliss. In the beginning, it took tremendous effort to have this kind of experience. In the beginning, you meditate on the experience. Years later, that experience meditates on you. I remember that a few days before Christmas, the whole ashram took a train ride from Hardwar to Patna, a city in Bihar, India. Bihar is one of the poorest states in India. The scenery was beautiful. We were traveling on this old, funky Indian train. We could see swamps that were full of lotus flowers. Wildlife was everywhere. Raj was having a 3-day program. I remember at the festival there was probably 1 million people there. At one point in the festival, the Ari Samaj attacked the festival. I'm not sure how many people died. The group caused a lot of trouble in India. It was kind of scary to sit on stage watching fighting only a half mile away. India was quite a different place. The people were quite friendly. They liked Westerners. The Indian people in general had a strong conviction for God. Before leaving to Bihar, my friend Peter left to go back to America. I loaned him the money, which I got back in South Africa. The Westerners left in January. There were only a few of us left. I spent my remaining time in Delhi. I remember I would meditate and go into town. The Indian food was great. I bumped into the son of James Arness. His father was a famous actor in Hollywood. He played in Gunsmoke on TV. He had a son, Ralph, at the time, who was a world champion surfer. It was quite funny meeting him. I was buying a kilo of cashews for $1. I just started talking to him. During this time, Raji was planning to go to South Africa. He needed a few Westerners to go and help set up the necessary arrangement. Somehow, Raji's mother asked me to go. So in early February, we embarked to Bombay. We took a train from Delhi to Bombay. Rajiv was in Bombay for a week. Upon reaching the train station, I realized that I lost the directions to the ashram. I just laughed and knew that everything would be all right. I was traveling with 3 Western girls. I said, "Let's go hop in a taxi." We got in a taxi and the driver said, "Where you want to go?" I said, "We will direct you." Bombay is a huge city. None of us had ever been there, and he couldn't believe it. But he did as he was told. I closed my eyes and received directions on where to go, left, right, etc. After about 45 minutes of driving, I told the driver to stop. We got out of the car, knocked on the door, and walked right into the ashram. I never told Raji how we got there. It was just a matter of fact. While we were in Bombay one day, I was in Raji's room where all of a sudden he got out of his bed, stood up, and started to wave his hands towards one of his initiators, Ashoka. The hair on his whole body stood up. It looked like he put his hand in a light socket. He was yelling, "Please, Raji, stop it." After about 20 seconds, Raji's hand fell to his side and Ashoka was back to normal. Being an 18-year-old kid that I was, I said, "Hi, I'm Raji. Do you want to zap him once more?" Raji said, "Sure," and just for a fraction of a second, he raised his hand and put electricity back into him. Raji was electrocuting him. We all laughed. This is my first time that I spent close time with Maraji. There was only a few Westerners there. It was so beautiful to play with him, at the same time, have a great respect for him. Before we left to Kenya, Maraji asked us to do one daily holy water. Holy water is a custom in India when the master places his foot in water. I only had a canteen, and Raji placed his foot inside of the canteen. We all laughed. The next day we headed out for Kenya. On board the plane was Kali, Kathleen, and Tess. These were the three girls I traveled with from New Delhi. On board the plane we drank the water from the canteen. All of us got rip-roaring drunk. I've been drunk prior to that once or twice, but this is a drunk of joy. We all somehow managed to saunter off the plane. We spent a few days in Nairobi. Tess's parents lived on the outskirts of town. Kenya was an incredible country. Parts of it looked like England. We relaxed for a few days. I remember one moment at Tess's house. I was meditating in the backyard. When I opened my eyes and saw Maraji standing there, he was laughing and laughing. I remember in Bombay asking him if we were to make it to South Africa. We were going to hitchhike from Kenya to South Africa. He said we would, but we were going to have a hell of a lot of adventures along the way. We slowly started to hitchhike from Kenya to South Africa. I have memories of our first night getting a ride and being on the Kenya plains in a horrendous rainstorm. Here we were in Africa, and the only houses around were grass huts. It was quite an experience. I remember one border crossing between Kenya and Tanzania. The Tanzanian border official became very upset because we didn't have a visa to enter the country. Kali became very upset and told the guy off. I was receiving an intuition to be quiet and to respect this officer. They pulled us into a room, and this officer just started to yell to Kali. All of a sudden he stopped and said, "I'm about to throw both of you in jail, but because, according to me, you've been such a gentleman, I will let you go." Another lesson in intuition. In Tanzania, the Chinese were building a railroad. Thousands of Chinese truck drivers were passing by. They all had the same expression on their faces. I remember one ride where Kali and I got picked up by two intelligent black Africans. We got in the car. After a few hours of driving, they got out of the car and shot two cows with a rifle. We thought we were next. They got in the car and said, "Oh, we just shot two elephants." We agreed with them. We knew we shouldn't cause any conflict, or maybe we would be next. I remember one night we were in a small jungle of town in the middle of nowhere. I was eating this soup that was full of mosquitoes. The air was so thick with mosquitoes that mosquitoes were falling into my soup. It was quite the scene. It was superhuman and hot. I was lucky not to get malaria. One night, we were sleeping in the tent when a huge thunderstorm came and blew away the tent. We awoke and found ourselves sleeping in a sea of mud. Quite the experience. I remember looking at the telephone poles and seeing Raji laughing and laughing. Well, we finally met up with Tess and Kathleen. We switched partners. I hitchhiked with Tess to the capital of Zambia. We all decided to meet there. It was quite an experience. We arrived at Lusaka, got out of the car, and moments later, colleague Kathleen got out of the car. We were all standing there when the Zambian came up to us and offered us to stay at his house. We went to his house, a dairy in the country. His name was Gary. We told him what we were doing and where we were going. At this time, our money situation was zero. A few days before, we ran out of money. I was pleased because I would see that everything would be taken care of. Anyway, Gary's uncle was president of the national TV in Zambia. He could arrange a television interview for us. The next day, around 5 o'clock, after the news, we were on national television. I only wore my Indian whites and no shoes. We had a beautiful interview for about 1 hour. The interviewer was very sincere. There was no sarcasm in his voice. The people of Africa were simple and open people. The TV station received hundreds of phone calls asking, "What was that?" The response was so great that the next day we were asked back to the TV station. The same phenomena happened. The Indian community heard us and invited us to their community. Every day we would give discourses in their temples and homes. We were treated like kings and queens. They would give us money, watches, and clothes. We had probably at least 6 major meals a day. It is a custom to accept food at someone's home. Each one of our guests would provide a huge spread. I remember one Hindu temple where the priest would take down Krishna's picture and put up Raji's picture. This is like the Catholic Church taking down Christ's picture. I remember seeing the Victoria Falls like it was yesterday. There was hundreds of monkeys in a forest canopy overlooking this incredible waterfall. Collie and I stood on this bridge, and a 360-degree rainbow encircled us. To this day, I can visualize this waterfall. Well, we finally made it to Johannesburg. It was quite the adventure. Somehow we managed to get a visa for South Africa. I spent about 2 weeks in Johannesburg resting up and living in the Indian community. There were a lot of Westerners, Black, and Indians interested. I was sent to Cape Town to prepare for Raji's visit. In Cape Town, I stayed in the house of Nigel Fairhead. Nigel and his house were great to me. They lived in town in an old 17th century church. Cape Town was a beautiful place to live. The Cape is surrounded by the Indian and Atlantic Ocean. Nigel introduced me to a fellow surfer, Chris Parker. We became great friends. I hadn't spoken to him in over 40 years until recently. We carried our conversation as it was just yesterday. My days in Cape Town were spent in preparation for Raji coming to visit. I would go to the university there and give talks about self-knowledge. The university and student body provided me with a classroom where I could speak. It's kind of funny, I was only 19 years old. The university was real receptive and curious. When Raji came to give a talk at the university, the whole student body showed up. I had a great time with Raj in Cape Town. There was only one other Westerner besides me. He was Gary Gerard and he was traveling with him. I remember at one point I was in Raji's room. We were alone. He was talking about his father, Sri Raji. I remember asking questions about his father. Raji gave me this magazine that came from England. It contained some of his discourses in England. On the back page was this picture of him. He gave me this magazine and signed it, Sanchi Maharaj. On the back of the magazine, he drew a map of his old school in Dehradun, India. One day we went to the Cape of Good Hope. It was an incredible sight to behold the Atlantic and Indian Ocean merging together at one point. I remember at one point Raji and the group had a race to get to the top of the stairs. I couldn't believe how fast he ran. He beat all of us by a long shot. I thought with all my training, I was fast. When I got to the top, I was breathing quite hard, and Raji was hardly breathing. I remember at one point a South African photographer took our picture. There was three of us, Raji, his longtime bodyguard, Bihari Singh, and myself. We placed our arms on top of each other's shoulders, just like kids, and said cheese. It was a great moment. The following day, we flew back to Johannesburg. I remember Raji passing out Nestle's white chocolates in the plane. We spent another 2 weeks in Johannesburg. Every day we would have people from all of our race, colors, and creed come to the house. For some reason, the South African government didn't do anything about it. We had Westerners, blacks, and Indians all coming together. There was such a harmony. I flew with Raji back to England. I remember the day after I got back, Raji was speaking to a large group of people. I walked into their room and he stopped speaking and turned to me. He said, "Right now, my body is in England, but my soul is in South Africa." It was a remarkable statement. The South African people captured his heart. Chris Parker. I first met Chris in Cape Town, South Africa, over 45 years ago. We became instant friends. I introduced Chris to meditation. Now, if you like to meditate and you're a surfer, you're on the same wavelength. Chris and Nigel are like brothers to me, yet I haven't seen them since my time in Cape Town. In fact, it wasn't until recently did we hook up again. We discovered each other through Facebook. All three of us would have Skype sessions, Nigel in South Africa, Chris in Australia, and myself in good old Kansas. We would talk at times for 3 hours. Now that's a good use of technology. It seems just like yesterday. Now, I've known them for probably less than 6 months, yet the connection between all of us is like brothers. I find that fascinating. Joe Lopez. I first met Joe in India. Joe at the time was the owner of a dojo in New York City. He started his school in the 60s. Joe and his students provided security for Raji at the Festival of Montrose. I was always impressed by Joe's demeanor. Here he was an incredible martial artist, and he had a heart of gold. He was kind and considerate towards others. He embodied the spirit of martial artists throughout history. When I lived in New York, Joe told me the story about how he got involved in Tai Chi and Qigong. One day he met a Tai Chi master in the early 70s. The master says, Hit me in the stomach as hard as you can. Joe says, I won't do that, I could kill you. The master says, no you won't. So Joe hits the masters and nothing happens. The master says, now it's my turn. The master doesn't even touch Joe. With his hands, sends energy through them and sends Joe crashing into a wall. That's how Joe gets introduced to Tai Chi and Qigong. He has been practicing ever since. Joe moved to Santa Monica in the 80s. He has taught classes at a park for over 30 years. Joe has combined meditation and his martial art practice to refine himself for over 50 years. I like that. I just found out I was writing this on May 7th, that today is Joe's birthday. I haven't seen or spoken to Joe in over 30 years. Happy birthday, Joe. Mark and Geraldine Lornhurst. I first met Mark at the festival in Montrose. He was only around 15 or 16 years old at the time. Mark came with his friend Joe Lopez. He helped with the security at the festival. Both my brother and I bonded with Mark. We have been friends ever since. Both my brother and I have both stayed for an extended time at Mark's family house during the 70s. His parents made us a part of their family. I still remember a dish that Mark made for dinner. It was broccoli and shredded Jarlsberg cheese. It was delicious. Mark was one of those people who helped me get involved in computers. At that time, he was going to school and he was studying computer science. Both Mark and I lived for a short time in the ashram in New York. Mark's parents were smart enough to say, we will support you in your studies so you can get a degree. Wise choice. I saw Mark on and off during the 80s. In 1982, I went to New York City for a business trip and stayed at their house for a week. One morning, I made the kids, Rachel and Christopher, pancakes. 35 years later, whenever my name is mentioned, Rachel speaks about my pancakes. Mark is like a brother to my brother and I. We have known him for around 46 years. Mark is kind and extremely generous. I would say he has a heart of gold. I first met Geraldine in New York City in 1976. I knew a few of her friends. Mark's mom was a psychologist. One of her best friends was also a psychologist. Geraldine was mentored by her, and over time, she was an incredible counselor. She had the insight from her practice of meditation and a keen sense of intuition to her clients. She eventually had clients all throughout the States. Geraldine helped me when my marriage broke up. She taught there are two sides to the stories. Don't be a victim and learn a lesson from it. She also taught to take out the weeds in your own garden, another wise advice. Mark and Geraldine have been together for over 40 years. They have been friends of mine for many years. I truly treasure them. They are one of my jewels in life. Words truly can't describe the love I have for the both of them. Sometime in June, I flew with Raji back to the States. He was going on another tour. I went back to my hometown for about 2 weeks. When I returned, many people asked where I came from. They thought I was from Iran. I told all my family and friends about my experiences abroad. Many of them were quite interested. Raji told colleague Kathleen and I to go to San Francisco to help set up for his visit. I took a train from Santa Barbara to San Francisco. Raji gave a couple of programs at Berkeley. From there we went to Monterey. I remember one day Bill Patterson, Miraji, and myself were in this room. Miraji was telling joke after joke. I thought I was going to die from laughter. I remember I tried to tell a joke, but I ruined the punchline. My next stage of the journey was in Colorado. I spent the summer there. Miraji had a 3-day program in a town called Montrose. I went there with a small group to help calm the town's fears. They were afraid that this festival would be a rock and roll affair. They didn't want drugs or alcohol or a bunch of rowdy people in their town. We calmed the town's fears and the festival was a huge success. Many of the people from this town came to the program. There was excellent press coverage. I'll always remember the sunsets during the program. They're probably the most beautiful I've ever seen. During the first day of the program, my twin brother John came to the program. I was pleasantly surprised. He was living in Utah and somehow he ended up here. The next couple of days he received knowledge. He was quite blown away. One funny incident was that Miraji never knew I had a twin brother. Bihari wanted to play a trick on Miraji. He got us both together and said, "Miraji, look at this. This will blow your mind." He looked over our way and did a double take. He turned to us in amazement and said, "Wow, this is the first time God ever made a mistake. He made Richard twice." We all laughed. My brother and I spent many hours together meditating. Meditation was love at first sight. We were both having incredible experiences. It was great for my brother to have the same kind of experience. He admitted when I came back from my travels, he didn't know quite what to believe. I guess the taste is in the pudding. In early September, I went to Colombia for 2 months. I had a great time there. The people were very innocent. The countryside was gorgeous. I spent a lot of time meditating and speaking at programs. I went on tour with a woman named Gita. We went to the major cities, Bogota, Cali, and Barranquilla. I love Cali. Cali is in a valley and is surrounded by mountains. The Cacao River flows to the eastern part of the city. The weather is almost the same year-round. The people were extremely friendly. I returned to the States and landed in Florida. I took a drive-away car from Miami to New York City. I remember one experience I fell asleep driving. I had no idea how long I fell asleep. It was quite the experience to wake up and find myself behind the wheel of a car. I got back to New York and spent a week there and then flew to India with my brother. Miraji had chartered 3 jumbo jets to fly to India. My brother and I were on the first one. I would like to thank one kind soul who paid for my plane ticket. Wherever you are, thank you. My brother and I helped with security. We had quite the life. During the day, we would sit outside the door and help with the security of Miraji's family. We would watch all kinds of interactions. During the night, my brother and I got into this routine. We tried to meditate all night long. We did this for about a month. The program came and went, and we all traveled to Premnagar, the site where I was the year before. This time, Premnagar was real crowded. There was probably over 1,000 people there. Fortunately, my brother and I were assigned to do security for Miraji. We stayed on top of the roof. Miraji's room was there. We had a great time. During the daytime, we would interact with Miraji, and at night we meditate all night long. I remember some incredible times. My brother and I were well liked by the people there. We developed strong friendships among the people. Meditation was quite the experience. I remember one night my brother and I went out and meditated next to the Ganges River. This was probably around midnight. As soon as we closed our eyes, both of us were swept away by this incredible white light. It was so bright I thought I was going to be blinded. The funny thing, my eyes were closed. This was such a love and bliss emanating from that light. After 1 hour, we were awakened by a man doing guard duty. He said there were many bandits in the air and we should go inside the compound. Well, that was the end of that experience. The only words I remember from Miraji was that one day he was talking about how the mind is time and the body is space. To go beyond time and space, we need meditation. Meditation is the key to go beyond time and space. I like that idea. Well, my brother and I returned to the States. We didn't get sick in India, but when we returned our bodies were frazzled. It took a few months to recover. We spent about 2 months in California. In early winter of '73, I went to Portland, Oregon. I had a great time in Portland. I was meditating a lot. I met a lot of real nice people. That summer, I drove from Portland, Oregon to Denver to New York City. My brother and I took an airplane ride to London. I remember one day that a real good friend of my brother came to the program. His name was John Slowski. I told John about the experience when I first came back from India. He had no idea what I was talking about. John was practicing meditation. At one point, we went into this tent, closed our eyes, and just sailed away. John Slowski and I had been friends from that day. I returned to New York and missed my ride back to Portland. Some of the directors at the time were really into politics. I guess with any organization, politics comes with the picture. I had a hard time with politics. Anyway, I missed my ride and decided to throw me out of the ashram. My brother was doing security for Maraji at the time, so I told him. He told Maraji and Maraji said he was in charge. They had no right to throw me out. I had a feeling many of the leaders were jealous of us. We didn't strive for any power. I certainly didn't have anything to prove. I was simply enjoying my experience. The people loved my brother and I. Spaced out. I spent 2 years living in an ashram in Mexico during the '70s. One of my dear friends had a sister who said I was the most spaced out person she'd ever met. She never told me to my face, but my friend did several times. I thought it was cruel, and I still do. I guess things like this get stuffed inside. Back then, I didn't say anything. Here's what I would say today. I'm 21 years old. Since high school, I've traveled around the world, learned how to meditate, was sent to Cape Town, South Africa. The task was to prepare for Maraji's talk to the Cape Town University. I was sent solo from a group in Johannesburg. I daily gave talks to the university, where I first started to talk on the grounds of the university. Within a short period of time, they gave me a classroom to speak in. Around 5,000 people came to hear Maraji speak. Maraji was extremely grateful for the work I did. During that summer, Maraji was going to do an outdoor program in Montrose, Colorado. I was sent along with 4 others to talk to the city council and help alleviate their fears. They didn't want drugs and alcohol in a huge, insane atmosphere to take place. We calmed down their fears, and many of the residents of Montrose came to the program. Maraji sent me to Colombia, South America. He and I did a tour of the country and gave talks. This is all between 18 and 21. I look back and I'm amazed what I accomplished in such a short period of time. I had to use practical skills in order to pull this off. I admit I was spaced out. I really don't think an ashram environment is conducive to life. I think it hinders it. That's my perspective. I think living in an ashram is like hiding from the world. I look back at the 40 plus years and see what I have accomplished. Frankly, I think a lot of my spaced out was due to not having responsibilities like I had in South Africa, Montrose, California, and Colombia. Anyway, I'm proud of looking at myself and working on myself for all these years. I've been consciously trying to get rid of that junk that exists inside. You have helped me to clean out the closet. Thanks. My first girlfriend. Before I met Anna Carney, I never had a true girlfriend. During my high school years, I had a hard time with the way we operate in society. For example, many of my friends would see a beautiful girl and say, "Wow, I wish I could get laid by her." They would compliment a girl by her breast size or judge someone who was overweight. I guess I saw life different as my friends. I knew this life was sacred. I knew that to know God wasn't to go to church on Sunday for an hour, then the rest of the week you can do anything you want. Knowing God isn't a token. You just don't unconsciously go through the motion. It's a moment by moment, day by day, year by year affair. At times, I was quite lonely in high school. All my friends had girlfriends, yet I never did. Girls liked me, but nothing ever developed. I think I only went on 2 dates in high school. I realized that loneliness was my soul was calling out to me. At times, it seemed something external will fill the loneliness, but it never will. The cup must be filled from within. Being young, I didn't know that. I first met Anna in an ashram in Mexico City. She was from Ireland. Anna definitely caught my attention. She was on the same wavelength as me. She loved to meditate. She was fun and loved the adventure of life. Anna had a great heart and soul. She was funny, she was smart, and she had wisdom. Also, she loved to cook. Anna was kind. She had the maturity and understanding that life is sacred. So over time, we fell in love. I remember once I needed to renew my visa for Mexico. Anna and I took a train to Guatemala. I still remember at the border crossing, this American boy around 10 years old with a beautiful parrot on his shoulder. My first thought was this boy already knows about life. I can sense that traveling was his education. We spent a week or 2 in Guatemala. I always will remember Lake Atilan. What a beautiful lake. The lake is surrounded by mountains and volcanoes. I love the Mayan people. They were short. Most of them were under 5 feet tall. Most of all, they were happy and content. They came from an incredible lineage. The Mayans at some point in time developed calendars that made the Gregorian calendar look primitive. Yet, we think they were ignorant and lived in the Stone Age. Anna and I visited Kali's mom. She had a house in Baja California. Along the way, we stopped off at Matishim Bay. This bay was well known since the 60s. On a good day, you could ride away for almost a mile. The only drawback is at sunset and sunrise, the Noceans came out by the millions. One day we took a walk up the point, past the bay. At some point, both of us realized that we should turn around. We couldn't quite pinpoint it. We turned around and started to walk back to Matishim Bay. Well, we were right to turn around. As soon as we were walking, a bullet whizzed so close we could hear it. We didn't turn around, but slowly walked away. At some point, Anna and I thought we were going to get married. It is a custom in Ireland that the man asks the father's daughter for his hand in marriage. So I did. Anna went back to Ireland to visit her family. We were going to meet in Toronto, Canada in a month. I remember Anna comes to Toronto and we're staying at this elderly couple's house. She made this dumpling soup that I still remember today. It was the best dumplings I ever had. We met Richard from White Rock, British Columbia. He was driving back home and said we could travel with him if we liked. We did. I remember traveling at night and an avalanche occurred as we were passing. We were at the right place and the right time. If we were off by 30 seconds, we would have been covered in snow. We ran into Mahatma Rajeshwar and Bill Patterson. They were going to do a TV interview and asked us if we wanted to come. We spent a few days there. Bill gave me a copy of a book about Milarepa. He was Tibet's greatest yogi. The Kagoo lineage still exists today, and in fact in Ashland, Oregon, there is a beautiful temple that comes from the Kagoo lineage. Bill unfortunately died about 10 years ago. He was well known for his kindness. We made it to British Columbia. We stayed at Dr. Michael Clapper's house. He has been on the cutting edge of health for over 40 years. Mahatma Rajeshwar and Bill Patterson came to visit our house. We made this incredible Indian meal for Canada's Thanksgiving. Bill showed me how to put chapatis in the oven to puff up. It was a beautiful technique. Anna and I moved to White Rock. It's right on the border of US and Canada. It borders Semiahmoo Bay. I remember walking home with Anna late at night when it was snowing. It was so peaceful. I used to play chess with the elderly man next door. He loved my company. Anna and I went to Vancouver Island with a friend of mine named Richard. He wanted to try out surfing. We went to Wreck Beach. The waves were quite fun. The water was cold. A friend of ours had a nice sauna that we used to heat up. At some point, Anna decides to move to Nelson, British Columbia. Quite frankly, I felt lost for a while. I really didn't have the maturity and life experience to cope with this. You can't put your happiness and love into someone else without having that inside of you. Nobody can fill you up. I learned that you can't hold on to something forever. Everything changes. Our relationship was never the same. I spent about 6 months in Nelson, British Columbia. We stayed in a beautiful cabin built from a friend of ours. Bill Scholl, his wife and son lived there. Nelson was an incredible place. I loved the town and people. Many of the folks were involved in meditation in one way or another. The first time I ever saw fireflies was in Nelson. I was captivated by the flashing of the lights. We love going to Nelson's hot springs. It's a natural hot springs with many different temperature pools. It was a great place to go and relax with your friends. Back then, it was real cheap in getting in. One of my favorite moments was going to Kootenay Bay for a 3-day adventure with Anna. We took this ferry to this island. I remember having French bread and brie along with a little white wine. The ferry ride was gorgeous. Mountains were all around the lake and the water was crystal clear. During my stay in Nelson, I met someone who went to the J. Victor Scheer Academy of Natural Healing in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I decided to move there. Anna moved to Gainesville, Florida. We met up in California about a year later. Anna was still living in Florida. I was still living in New Mexico. I introduced Anna to my mom and dad. I remember my dad made homemade gazpacho soup. It was served cold. Anna and I made an Indian meal for my mom. During this trip, Anna and I went by car to Nevada City to visit my grandmother Josie. I love my grandmother. That was the last time I ever saw her. Anna and I never got together. The last time I saw her was over 30 years ago. We had lunch at a Chinese restaurant in Miami Beach. I remember having wonton soup. I have fond memories of Anna. Anna has been happily married since 1997. I'm happy that she has found someone special in her life. Thanks, Anna, for being a part of my life. Santa Fe, New Mexico. I went to J. Victor Scheer Academy of Natural Healing in Santa Fe, New Mexico for 1 year. It was an incredible experience. I made enough money in Canada to pay for my tuition. Dr. Scheer was a well-loved, respected naturopath, physician, massage therapist in Santa Fe for over 40 years. He was a great healer and teacher. Short and wiry, Jay was a strong man with huge warm hands. He had a wonderful sense of humor, a generous spirit, and a kind heart. His compassion for those in pain or need was boundless, and he never turned anyone away. Jay trained hundreds of students. Jay introduced me to Saint Germain, an ascended master. Back then, he was on the cutting edge of New Age, Old Age thought. This is from his school's website. His love and passion for massage therapy was central to all his work. Even at age 84, he would come out of his massage treatment room doing a little dance, saying, "If you're doing it right, it gives you energy." As a naturopath, Dr. Shear also practiced homeopathy, nutrition, herbal medicine, color therapy, colonic irrigation, and spiritual healing. He was a pioneer in the naturopathic field, passionately committed not only to the healing process of individuals with whom he worked, but also to the living body of knowledge that's always evolving and can be passed down from teacher to student in a mentoring tradition. Scott Gershwin was the primary teacher. He was a gentle soul. The classes usually occurred inside of his house. Scott and his wife Vivian died in an airplane crash in Burma. This is from the New York Times. On June 21st, 45 Burmese died when a Burmese airplane, Fokker Friendship 27, a Dutch-made medium-range plane, that is, the airline's mainstream aircraft, hit an 8,200-foot high mountain minutes after takeoff from the eastern town of Heiho, about 280 miles north of Rangoon. The government has not said what caused the plane crash. The crash today occurred one day after diplomatic officials reported that police protection of the United States Embassy in Rangoon had been increased because of reports that an anti-American terrorist group had entered Burma. Here's a list of casualties. The State Department released the names of 12 of the Americans killed in the crash. Scott Gershwin, Santa Fe, New Mexico. Vivian Gershwin, Santa Fe, New Mexico. I took a trip with Scott Gershwin and Vivian to Mazatlan, Mexico during our spring break. We camped out for a whole week. This is when their relationship began. I had two incredible roommates and classmates, Silas Smith and Ephraim French. They were both from Santa Fe, California. Silas was tall, around 6'6", but he had incredible agility. He was an incredible skateboarder. In fact, he won first place at a skateboarding event at Los Alamos, where the Manhattan Project occurred in the 40s. I have fond memories of listening to the Jefferson Starship play the song Miracles on the radio. My other favorite song was Dust in the Wind by the band Kansas. We would skateboard at night on this incredible mountain road. Ephraim would drive this car and the headlights were on full beam. Silas and I would ride down the mountain, weaving back and forth. It was a blast. Silas and I loved to play tennis at the governor's mansion. He was kind to let people play on his tennis court. Ephraim was fun to play with. We didn't play to win, but we played to have fun. Big difference. Both of them worked at the Sheraton Hotel as waiters. Another friend of mine, Bill Weiland, worked there also. Silas, Ephraim, and I for a while stayed at Nora Fisher's house. She lived a few blocks from the plaza. Nora was kind and gracious having us there. Nora was creator of textiles at the museum and the International Folk Art in Santa Fe. She has since retired. It was always an atmosphere of fun and enjoyment. I remember there was a party at Nora's friend's house. It was out in the country. This house was built out of adobe. It was awesome. One of my favorite styles is adobe. The adobe keeps the house cool during summer and warm during winter. I remember falling asleep on the floor. The next morning, my friend said, "Did you know we had a party last night?" and we danced all over you and you didn't wake up. Talk about sound sleep. This is what Nora has written about her career. Pretty incredible. I will be honest, at that time, I really didn't know or understand her work. 40 years later, I'm beginning to see her importance in her field. Between 1965 and 1998, I had 33 years working as a curator with textile collections in a museum setting. First at the Textile Museum in Washington, D.C., and then at the Museum of International Folk Art, Santa Fe, New Mexico. During that time, I worked with museum collections. I had several stints at designing and instituting new textile storage areas and was awarded an international partnerships among museums grant to do a museum exchange with the Kekar Museum in Pune, Madhusristar, Mud, Mirror, and Thread Folk Traditions of Rural India, published by Mapen Press in 1993, 1995, and most recently in 2006. I have pursued fieldwork studying the Banjari in 8 states: Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarati, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka. As for myself, Nora Fisher, I have 33 years experience working with textile collectors in a museum setting. First at the Textile Museum in Washington, D.C., and then at the Museum of International Folk Art in Santa Fe, New Mexico. During the time I worked with museum collections, I had several stints at designing and instituting new textile storage areas. During my museum work, I took 2 personal senior fellowships, 1988 to 99 and 1999 to 93, that were processed through the American Institute of Indian Studies, New Delhi. Both grants were hosted at Gujarat Vidyapith and Ahmedabad, and both focused on the embroidery and dress of the Banjar. I have done fieldwork studying the Banjar in 8 states: Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Gujarati, Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, and Karnataka. I am most at ease in Karnataka, working the Banjar, visiting and staying in Tandas, and meeting with Banjar in cities. Mud, Mirror, and Thread, Folk Traditions of Rural India was published by Mapen Press in 1993-95, and most recently in 2009. Nora had this small, funky convenience store near her house. I would buy bananas and frozen orange juice to make smoothies. During the winter, we would like to soak up the rays outside the house. I remember feeling the rays in my body. Words truly can't describe it. For a time, I worked at the Compound, a famous restaurant on Canyon Road. Esquire magazine awarded the Restaurant of the Year for the Southwest. It was built out of adobe. I loved the inside of the restaurant. The walls were painted in pure white. The owner was Victor Saghir, originally from Lebanon. He was a great boss. I remember they would serve these incredible meals for the staff. I once waited upon the table of Art Garfunkel, the Simon and Garfunkel fame. I would ride my bike to work. During the winter, it was so peaceful riding my bike back home at night. At times it would be snowing, it was so serene. Nobody else would be on their road. I would pass the main plaza in town, and all these incredible lights were surrounding the plaza. I never saw that it was a custom to place candles inside of paper bags. Wow. This is called a La Maria or Farolito, depending on who you talk to. New Mexico is called the land of enchantment. It's in the high desert. About 40 minutes away is the Santa Fe National Forest. The Santa Fe ski basin is there. I first learned how to ski there. The most incredible sunsets were to occur there. Being in the high desert, it seemed you could almost touch the sky. At times, it would give me chills on the beauty. This is literally God's painting. The signposts are everywhere. Each and every sunrise and sunset was different. Yogi Bhajan and his followers had this incredible vegetarian restaurant in town. Back then, they didn't have very many. They served a mixture of Indian and vegetarian cuisine. They also had the Golden Temple ice cream with either honey or carob. You could buy the ice cream at the local food co-op. This is probably the best tasting ice cream I ever had. I met Yogi Bhajan once. Ephraim's friend was getting married and Yogi Bhajan was going to do the ceremony. His friend was an attorney for the organization. My friend Ephraim was friends with Juan Hamilton. I met him a few times. This is from Bazaar magazine, including the picture. Georgia O'Keeffe's intimate relationship with Juan Hamilton, 58 years her senior, was an art world scandal. At that time, Georgia O'Keeffe was my favorite artist. She definitely lived outside the box. I admired that. She moved to New Mexico from New York so she could paint whatever came her way. San Francisco had an avant-garde movie theater. They would play films all around the world. I remember they would serve incredible food there. It wasn't your typical movie food such as popcorn and soda. They would serve beer and wine. It was quite the experience. It's funny. My friend Paul Cohen's black sheep of the family was Ram Dass. Ephraim, Silas, and I saw him give a talk in Albuquerque about an hour away from Santa Fe. I don't remember too much about his talk. He went over his life. At that time, Ram Dass was at the forefront in the meditation movement. He was underground. At that time, meditation was still on the fringe of society. You were considered an outcast back then. Today, you can learn about meditation almost anywhere. Times have changed. Since then, I haven't seen Ephraim or Nora. When I moved to Ashland, Oregon, I heard rumors that Silas lived in the area. Through synchronicity, I tracked him down. It was just like the old times. Our connection never died. Silas comes to my Christmas Eve birthday party when I come to town for a visit. Ultimately, I discovered that the search for oneself has to be done by yourself. A teacher may give you the tools, but you have to utilize them. It is our responsibility to make this quest. Of course, at times, it's very difficult. We learn a lot of lessons on the way. Each one of us are on our journey. We are our own teacher and student on this journey. I have different lessons than you have. Each one of us are truly unique. I feel that we are on a quest to find ourselves. We are here to have a complete understanding on life. Man will never stop growing. The pursuit of knowledge is ingrained into our very existence. We are beings on the pursuit of knowledge. We are wondering who I am. What is my purpose on this planet? Where am I going? All of us deep down have this inner calling. It's part of our DNA makeup. For thousands of years, man has been yearning to find out the answers. Man ultimately learns that the search exists inside. We have all looked for the answers outside, but the real answer lies inside of our own being. We are in fact our own teacher. We may have help on the outside from outside teachers, but ultimately it is up to each one of us. I feel so fortunate that throughout history our planet has been blessed by teachers who have dedicated their lives to helping mankind. Let's take their wisdom and knowledge and transform this planet. I've learned that over time to be more compassionate and loving towards people. Let's accept this human race and let's go on from there. We all want peace on earth. Let's open our hearts. Over time, I realized that we are our best teachers. We are the ones who open up the door. Only we can transform ourselves.